I used to think love would come quietly like a warm breeze on a spring morning, subtle and kind. But the day I met Adrian Blake, it came like a lightning strike. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind where exhaustion clings to you after a long day of lectures. I climbed onto the bus, juggling my backpack and an old canvas tote, eyes down, ready to zone out until my stop. "Here, take my seat," a deep voice said. I looked up. He stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal gray coat that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, not on public transit. His smile was easy, warm, and disarming. "Thank you," I murmured, sliding into the seat. I expected him to pull out his phone and ignore me, but he stayed near, holding the rail, his eyes flicking to me with curiosity. "You don't look like you're from around here," he said lightly, almost cautious. I blinked, a little surprised. "I'm a student. University of Texas, languages major." "That explains it," he said, studying me just long enough to make me feel noticed, but not uncomfortable. Confident, but cautious. "Sorry, that probably sounds strange." I smiled despite myself. A little. He laughed softly, and it was warm, genuine, like he actually cared what I thought. We talked all the way to my stop about nothing really. Coffee shops, favorite parks, how Texas weather couldn't decide if it wanted to be summer or winter. When the bus hissed to a stop, I stood, ready to disappear back into my normal, quiet life. But he called out, "Wait, can I get your number? I'd like to see you again." Normally, I would have said no. I wasn't the type to hand my number to a stranger. But something in the way he looked at me, like I was the only person on that bus, made me nod. Sure. The very next night, I found myself standing outside a restaurant I had no business being in. The kind of place with soft golden lighting, sleek cars lined up at the valet, and a maitre d' who looked at you like they already knew your credit score. I hesitated, smoothing my simple black dress, and then Adrian appeared, smiling like I was exactly who he wanted to see. "You look incredible," he said, kissing the back of my hand like some old-world gentleman. Dinner with him felt like stepping into another life. He ordered wine I couldn't pronounce and told me stories about growing up in Europe, about his adoptive parents, Robert and Helena DuPont, who lived mostly in Paris and Geneva, traveling between art shows and charity events. He said he returned to Texas because he wanted to reconnect with his roots. I listened, fascinated. He wasn't bragging. He just shared, like someone who trusted me with pieces of himself. And when he asked about me, my classes, my family, my dreams, he actually listened. By the time he walked me to my car, I realized something strange. I wanted to see him again. From then on, we were inseparable. Study sessions turned into coffee dates turned into weekend hikes, and weekend hikes turned into late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. Adrian had this way of making me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just another college student grinding through assignments and part-time work. He'd text me good morning before my alarm went off and good night long after I'd fallen asleep. He made me laugh when I was stressed, brought me coffee on days I didn't think I could handle one more lecture, and once showed up at my apartment with flowers just because. It wasn't long before he started talking about the future. "You should meet my parents," he said one evening as we sat on the balcony of his downtown condo, the city lights glowing beneath us. "They'll love you. They've always wanted me to find someone special." I blinked, caught off guard by how fast everything was moving, but in a good way. "Are you sure? I mean, we've only been dating for long enough," he cut in with a grin. "Trust me, Sarah, you're different." No one had ever said that to me before, not like that. And I realized then how much I liked hearing it. For the first time in years, I let myself believe I could have a love that was safe and maybe even lasting. Before Adrian came along, my life was simple, maybe too simple. I grew up in a small town just outside Austin, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and most of your business. My childhood wasn't perfect, but it was honest and a little hard at times. My mom, Patricia, though everyone calls her Patty, was the kind of woman who could stretch $1 like magic. She worked long hours at the local grocery store, stocking shelves, running the register, doing whatever it took to keep food on our table. My dad left when I was 7. There were no phone calls, no birthday cards, just absence, like someone had cut a hole in our lives and left it there. Mom never said a bad word about him, but I could see how her eyes hardened whenever someone mentioned his name. She didn't have the luxury of bitterness. She had 2 daughters to raise, and she did it on her own. Then there was Jenna, my older sister by 3 years. She used to be my hero, confident, graceful, unstoppable. Jenna was a dancer, and not just any dancer. She was winning competitions, getting invited to regional showcases, and talking about moving to New York one day. Watching her perform was like watching someone fly. Then came the accident. A rainy evening, a slick road, and a driver who couldn't stop in time changed everything. Jenna's left leg took most of the impact. The doctors saved it, but her career, it was gone. She tried for months to push through, to keep dancing despite the pain, but eventually she quit. And then her fiancé left. He said all the right things. It's not you, it's me, and I just can't handle seeing you like this. But the truth was simpler. He didn't want a life with someone who couldn't dance anymore. Jenna retreated into herself after that. She stopped performing, stopped dating, stopped living in a way. Some days she was okay, joking and chatting like old times, but most days she stayed in her room with headphones on, pretending the world outside didn't exist. I think watching her go through that is what made me cautious about relationships. I told myself I was focusing on school, on working toward a degree in Spanish language and literature, but deep down I was just scared of giving someone that kind of power over me. Still, there was a part of me that longed for something real. Not just a fling, not just a boyfriend, but someone who saw me, who stayed. That's probably why Adrian felt like such a miracle. He stepped into my life with his easy smile and warm voice, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel weighed down by everything I'd seen go wrong. Mom noticed before anyone else. One Sunday, she set down her mixing spoon and stared at me. "You're smiling more lately," she said, half accusing, half teasing. "Is there a boy involved?" I wanted to deny it like I usually did when she pried, but instead I laughed and nodded. "Yeah, Mom, there's someone." She studied me for a long moment, like she was weighing whether to be happy or worried. Finally, she sighed and said softly, "Just promise me one thing, Sarah. Take care of your heart. It's worth more than you know." At the time, I thought she was just being protective. I didn't know how right she was. When Adrian invited me to dinner with his parents, I was nervous but also excited. Meeting someone's family meant something. It meant we weren't just casually dating anymore. It meant he was serious. "They're a little different," he said with a grin as he steered his car through winding roads. "Grew up in France, lived all over Europe. You'll like them." That word, different, echoed in my head all day. My roommate, Emily, gave me a strange piece of advice before I left. If they speak French, pretend you don't understand it. People say things when they think you can't follow along. I almost laughed. "Emily, I'm not fluent. I only took beginner French for my language elective." "Exactly. Don't let them know you understand even a little," she said, wagging a finger. "Just smile and nod. Trust me." So that's what I decided to do. The DuPont home looked like something out of an architectural magazine. Sleek modern lines softened by warm lighting, with framed European art lining the walls. Helena DuPont greeted us at the door, a tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked hair swept back into a perfect bun. Robert, her husband, followed, quiet but with an assessing look in his eyes that made me sit a little straighter. "Bienvenue," Helena said warmly, kissing Adrian on both cheeks before turning to me. "And you must be Sarah." I smiled, murmuring hello. Adrian quickly added, "She mostly speaks English, Mom." Helena's smile softened, but something in her eyes flickered. Interest? Amusement? I couldn't tell. We sat at a long oak table set like a painting. Polished silverware, crystal glasses, flickering candles. At first, everything felt almost perfect. Helena asked polite questions about school and family. Robert nodded along, occasionally adding a short comment. Adrian kept one hand resting lightly on mine, as if to remind me I belonged there. But then, midway through dessert, Helena glanced at her husband and switched to French. Elle voit smooth, deliberate. Elle ne sait pas pourquoi nous avons besoin d'elle, n'est-ce pas? She doesn't know why we need her, does she? My breath caught, but I kept my face blank, pretending I hadn't understood a word. Adrian answered quickly, also in French. Non, elle ne sait rien. No, she doesn't know a thing. Helena smiled faintly, taking another sip of wine, and turned the conversation back to English, complimenting my dress as if nothing unusual had happened. I forced a polite smile, but inside my heart was pounding. Need me? For what? The rest of dinner passed in a blur. I nodded when I was supposed to, smiled when it felt right, all while replaying those French words in my mind over and over. On the drive back, Adrian was cheerful, asking me what I thought of his parents. They're very sophisticated, I said carefully. He chuckled. Yeah, they can be intimidating. Don't take it personally. They've just lived in a different world for so long. I nodded, staring out the window, but I couldn't shake that feeling, like I'd just stepped into something I didn't understand. That night, lying in bed, I whispered the words I'd overheard under my breath. She doesn't know why we need her. Whatever that meant, it wasn't about love or acceptance or family. It was about me being useful to them somehow. And for the first time since I'd met Adrian, a cold thread of fear slipped through the warmth I felt for him. 2 weeks after that dinner, Adrian surprised me with an idea. Let's get away this weekend, he said, leaning casually against my kitchen counter. Just you and me. I booked a cabin out in the hill country. You could use a break. We both could. On the surface, it sounded perfect, quiet, romantic, far from school stress, and the echo of Helena's words still stuck in my head. I hesitated, but Adrian noticed and cupped my face gently. You've been tense lately. Let me take care of you for once. I nodded slowly. Okay, yeah, that sounds nice. The drive itself was beautiful. Rolling hills, wildflowers swaying in the warm Texas wind, and Adrian humming softly to the radio. He seemed completely at ease, like this was just another step in our relationship. I wanted to believe it. When we arrived, I stepped out and blinked at the view. The cabin looked like something from a travel magazine. Wood and stone wraparound porch, and beyond it, a shimmering lake reflecting the golden evening sun. Pretty amazing, huh? Adrian said, slipping an arm around my waist. Come on, let's unpack and start dinner. Inside, the place was even more luxurious. Fireplace, soft rugs, a kitchen already stocked. Adrian opened a bottle of red wine and poured me a glass. To us, he said with a warm smile. We talked, we laughed, we cooked together, and for a while I forgot about that nagging voice in my head. Until I noticed how often he refilled my glass. By the time I sat down, my head felt light. Adrian, I feel tired. My words came out thick, my vision tilting. He was by my side in an instant, lowering me gently onto the couch. Should just rest, he whispered, his voice calm and oddly distant. I woke up to the smell of damp wood and something metallic. My head throbbed, and my hands wouldn't move. They were tied behind me. I was on a cold concrete floor in what looked like a basement. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I heard Adrian's voice, calm and deliberate, from somewhere above. Yeah, she's ready. Everything's in place. A chill shot down my spine. She's ready? Ready for what? I twisted my wrists, wincing as the ropes cut into my skin. Adrian, what are you doing? My voice cracked, panicked. He appeared at the top of the stairs, descending slowly, his expression soft, almost tender but wrong. Sarah, you don't understand now, but you will. This is going to change your life. My heart pounded, so hard I thought I might pass out. Untie me. Adrian, please. Whatever this is, it isn't funny. He crouched in front of me, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Should trust me. Soon you'll thank me. And in that moment, staring at the man I thought I loved, I knew two things. He wasn't who I thought he was, and if I didn't get out, I might never get home again. The ropes dug into my wrists, burning with every movement, but I didn't care. Panic sharpened everything. My breathing, the cold floor beneath me, even the faint hum of crickets outside. Adrian's voice drifted from upstairs. Calm. Steady. Yeah, she's ready. Everything's in place, no. She doesn't suspect a thing. My stomach twisted. She's ready? For what? I looked around the basement. A single dangling bulb cast pale light over the concrete walls. There, a rusty nail sticking from an old wooden doorframe. I shifted, inching toward it on my knees, praying the ropes didn't snap loud enough for him to hear. My pulse throbbed in my ears as I began rubbing the ropes against the nail. At first, nothing. Then a strand gave way. Then another, until one hand slipped free. I froze, listening. Adrian was still talking upstairs. I untied the rest with trembling fingers, then moved to my ankles. My hands were slick with sweat, but finally the ropes fell away. The stairs were too risky. I turned to the small window near the ceiling. It was tight, but I shoved it open and crawled through, scraping my arms on the rough frame. Cold night air hit my face as I fell to the ground outside. I ran. Branches whipped my arms and face as I tore through the woods. Behind me, a shout split the night. Sarah, stop. It's not what you think. I didn't stop. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept running. Every snapping branch sounded like his footsteps closing in. Then, ahead, a light, faint but real. A cabin. I sprinted toward it, tripping on a root and hitting the ground hard before scrambling up again. Help! I screamed, pounding on the door. Please help me. The door swung open, and a man filled the frame, tall, broad, wearing a gray hoodie. Beside him, a Belgian Malinois growled low, muscles coiled to spring. What's going on? He demanded, eyes narrowing. Someone, he drugged me. Tied me up, he's coming, please. My voice cracked as tears spilled down my face. The man didn't hesitate. He stepped aside, pulling me in and snapping a command. Duke, watch! The dog bolted out, barking fiercely into the night. From somewhere behind us, Adrian cursed and retreated into silence. The man slammed the door, locking it. You're safe now, he said firmly, scanning me from head to toe. You're shaking. Sit down. I collapsed onto a worn leather chair, my body trembling uncontrollably as adrenaline drained out of me. Who tied you up? He asked, kneeling to look at the rope burns on my wrists. My boyfriend. Adrian Blake, I stammered. He's not who I thought he was, he said. He was helping me. But my voice trailed off as the reality hit me. I had trusted the wrong person, and it had nearly cost me everything. The man's jaw tightened. Name's Mark Bennett. I live out here, ex-army, now search and rescue. You're safe here. Thank you, I whispered, tears spilling again. First things first, we call the sheriff. He grabbed his phone and dialed, speaking quickly, efficiently. When he finished, he handed me a blanket and crouched beside me again. You're okay now. Whatever he planned, it's over. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Adrian had a reason for what he did, and until I knew what it was, I wouldn't feel truly free. The deputies arrived 20 minutes later. By then, my mom and sister had shown up too. Mark had called them when I couldn't form words. Mom wrapped me in her arms so tight I could barely breathe. You're safe now, baby, she whispered. But even as I clung to her, one thought kept echoing. Why did they need me? I didn't have an answer, yet. The sheriff's office felt colder than the night outside. A deputy wrapped a blanket around my shoulders as I sat under the harsh, fluorescent lights, trying to keep my breathing steady. Take your time, Miss Mitchell, one officer said gently. Start from the beginning. So I did every detail. Meeting Adrian, falling in love, dinner with his parents, the words in French I wasn't supposed to understand, and finally waking up tied in a basement. When I finished, there was a long silence. The lead investigator, Detective Harris, tapped his pen against his notebook. You said you understood some French. What exactly did you hear? I repeated it carefully. She doesn't know why we need her, does she? And Adrian's reply, no, she doesn't know a thing. Harris exchanged a look with another deputy. That tracks with some intel we've been piecing together. I frowned. Intel? On what? He leaned forward. Adrian Blake isn't just a charming boyfriend. His adoptive parents, Robert and Helena DuPont, are under quiet investigation for international fraud. Fraud? My voice cracked. They've been posing as humanitarian consultants, claiming to help wealthy families locate missing relatives. They charge millions, but in most cases, they don't actually find anyone. And when they do deliver someone, Harris's eyes met mine, steady and grave. They deliver the wrong person. A look-alike. My stomach sank. A look-alike like me. Harris nodded. One of their clients is Viktor Ryabintsev, a billionaire who lost his young daughter years ago. Word is he's still desperate to find her and willing to pay whatever it takes. Your resemblance to her? It's uncanny. The room tilted for a moment. So Adrian, he never loved me. He targeted you, Harris said bluntly. Built trust, made sure you were emotionally invested, then planned to deliver you to Ryabintsev as his missing daughter. They would have faked enough documents to make it look real. A chill ran through me, so deep I felt like I'd never be warm again. By morning, deputies had swarmed the cabin where Adrian had taken me. They found the ropes, the sedative-laced wine, and a duffel bag full of forged paperwork, including a passport with my picture, but someone else's name. Robert and Helena were arrested at a small private airfield, attempting to board a plane bound for France. Adrian was caught hours later, hiding in an abandoned storage facility. When they brought him in, I was still at the station, giving a formal statement. He looked calm, almost resigned. Sarah, he said softly as they let him past me in handcuffs. You don't have to hate me. I was giving you a better life. I stared at him, stunned. You call that a better life? Drugging me? Lying to me? Selling me like I'm property? For the first time, a flicker of something crossed his face, maybe shame, maybe regret. But it was gone in an instant as they took him away. The FBI became involved within days. It turned out this wasn't the first time the DuPonts had tried something like this. They had executed similar scams in Europe, swapping in lookalikes for missing heirs. Most victims had been too embarrassed or too traumatized to come forward, but I wasn't going to be silent. I gave my statement to anyone who needed it. I sat through endless hours of interviews and depositions, and each time I spoke, I felt like I was clawing back a piece of myself that Adrian had tried to steal. Still, the nights were hard. I'd wake up gasping, thinking I was still in that basement, still tied down, still listening to Adrian's voice telling me I'd thank him later. Mark Bennett, the man who saved me, stopped by often just to check in. Sometimes he didn't even say much, just sat on the porch with me while Duke, his Belgian Malinois, lay at our feet. Somehow, that quiet company made it easier to breathe. I was free, but I still didn't feel safe. Not yet. The weeks after Adrian's arrest blurred together. I was safe, but safety didn't feel the way I thought it would. Every night, I jolted awake, convinced I was still in that basement, still hearing his voice whisper, "You'll thank me later." Mom tried to help in the only way she knew how, by cooking. Every time I turned around, there was another casserole in the fridge or a fresh pie cooling on the counter. Jenna tried too, awkwardly at first, but she slowly began opening up about her own pain. "You didn't deserve that," she told me one afternoon, her eyes glossy. And I didn't deserve what happened to me either. Maybe we both have to stop blaming ourselves for what other people did. Her words stuck with me, but it was Mark who helped me begin to breathe again. He showed up at my porch one evening, Duke trotting happily by his side. "Thought I'd check in," he said, scratching the dog's ears. "See how you're holding up." I shrugged, unable to hide how tired I felt. Some days are fine, some not so much. Mark nodded like he understood more than I could put into words. That's normal. Healing isn't neat. It's messy and it's slow. And that's okay. His voice carried a weight of experience I hadn't noticed before. Eventually, he told me why. For years earlier, his wife and young daughter had died in a car accident. He'd left the army after that and moved out to the hill country, choosing solitude over anything else. I couldn't stand people looking at me like I was broken, he admitted one night as we walked Duke near the lake. So I came out here where nobody knew me. I looked at him, realizing he understood what it meant to feel safe and unsafe at the same time, to want connection but fear it. Over the next few weeks, we talked more. Sometimes about big things, grief, trust, starting over, and sometimes about small things like which coffee shop had the best cinnamon rolls. But every conversation felt safe. Mark didn't try to fix me. He didn't tell me to smile or move on. He just let me be. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting everything gold, Mark said something that stopped me in my tracks. You're stronger than you think. You didn't just survive, Sarah. You ran, you fought, you got yourself out. That's grit most people never find. I swallowed hard. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it to be it, he said softly. In time, we found ways to help each other. He encouraged me to take long walks again, without panicking at every snapping branch, and I encouraged him to reconnect with people, to let someone in again. Then came an unexpected twist. With help from Mark's old army contacts, we located Viktor Ryabintsev's real missing daughter, Julia. Watching father and daughter reunite after decades apart was overwhelming, not just for them, but for me. It reminded me that not everything ended in betrayal. Some things could still be good. That night, sitting on the porch with Mark and Duke, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Adrian. Peace. Mark handed me a cup of coffee and said quietly, almost shyly, I like having you around. For the first time in a long time, I smiled a real smile. I like being around too. And in that moment, with Duke curled at our feet and the stars stretching endlessly above us, I realized something powerful. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of Mark, not of trusting someone new, and maybe not even of my own future. The seasons shifted as my life quietly rebuilt itself. What once felt like permanent darkness slowly warmed into something brighter, safer. Mark and I didn't rush anything, but somehow it still felt like we had been moving toward each other all along. He was patient, steady, the kind of man who let silence mean safety instead of awkwardness. One evening, Jenna stood in front of me, tears in her eyes without her crutches. I got approved for the final phase of surgery, she said, voice trembling with joy. It turned out Viktor Ryabintsev, grateful beyond words that we had helped reunite him with his real daughter, had paid for every procedure Jenna needed to dance again. The night before her surgery, Jenna took my hands and whispered, You saved me, Sarah. Without you, I'd still be hiding. You didn't just escape. You pulled me out of my own basement, too. I hugged her tightly, realizing healing was rarely just one person's journey. It rippled outward, touching everyone you loved. Months later, on a warm spring evening, Mark led me to the lake near his cabin. Duke bounded ahead, tail wagging, as if he knew something I didn't. Sarah, Mark began, his voice carrying an edge of nervousness I'd never heard before. I spent years thinking my life was over. That love was something I'd already lost. But then you came banging on my door, terrified and brave all at once, and you woke me up. He pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. I don't know what the future looks like, but I know I want to face it with you. Will you marry me? Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, yes. For a moment, everything stood still, the wind, the trees, even my own fear. Because in that moment, I wasn't broken. I was whole. We had a small wedding in Jenna's favorite dance studio, the one she had refused to step foot in for years. That day, she danced again, slow, careful, but radiant, with Mark and me watching through tears. And a month later, as Mark and I unpacked the last box in the small house he'd been building, I held a pregnancy test in my trembling hands. Positive. That night, I stood on our porch, staring at the stars over the Texas Hill Country, one hand resting on my stomach, and whispered, "We're okay now, we're safe." I had thought the world would always feel dangerous after what happened, that trust would always feel impossible. But I was wrong. Sometimes life breaks you open so something better can grow. And this life I almost lost was finally beautifully mine again.